first and foremost, really want to thank all of you for joining in today. And today we have a very, very interesting and something that is core to digital marketing. That's a kind of session that we've planned for today. It will be all about inbound marketing. And I was having a brief chat with Raghu before this session, and he mentioned that he'll be sharing a lot of case studies around inbound marketing today. And he has actually taken up most of the case studies from outside India, not from India. In fact, I had a similar experience where we actually internally created content for inbound marketing. There are not many good businesses who are doing exactly what is needed to be done as per inbound marketing. So I'm really, really looking forward to today's session to learn a lot of new things. So the topic of today's session is how to develop a content strategy to turbocharge your inbound marketing. To lead this session, we have with us Raghuram. Raghuram, he's a founder and the director and the CEO of Aspect 9 Consulting. Within Aspect 9 Consulting, as a director of Aspect 9 Digital, Raghu actually helps businesses develop their digital content strategy to empower their inbound marketing channels. And he has more than 2 decades of experience in dealing with digital content. I'm really delighted and excited to have Raghu, you with us today. Thanks a lot for taking time out. Those of you who are attending our session for the first time, uh, by default, all of you are muted. So anytime you have any question, any concern, please type it down in the question panel. We'll have a session for about 40 minutes, and then we'll keep 20 minutes for the open Q&A. That's it from my side. Over to you, Raghu.
Thanks, Kapil. I hope I'm audible to all of you.
Yes, you are, Raghu.
Okay, awesome. All right. So I think let's dive right into it. We have an hour with us, and I'm trying to keep the conversation as crisp and brief as I possibly can, because I believe that one-way traffic gets rather boring. So I'd rather, leave you with some thought-provoking ideas and some concepts really at a high level, and get done with the static one-way presentation in the first half. And then we really deep dive into the Q&A, and that's when you should be able to get more value out of the entire session. Please feel free to pause and ask questions, preferably using the chat window so that there isn't much of an audio disturbance. And I'll try to take in as many questions as I can as we move along the presentation. Else, if you can hold off your questions till the latter half of the presentation when we get into the Q&A, that would also be preferred. All right? Good to go. All right. So I think most of you have, in some shape or form, actively been a part of or are continuing to be a part of developing various digital strategies, right? And what I found, in whatever experiences I've had with various organizations, and I think you would agree with me there, is that content is at the very heart of how things happen. And that is really my leading statement, right? I mean, you might have the best tools, the best people, the best systems, very well articulated goals, but execution, right? As Ramcharan would say, execution is at the heart of getting things done. And content is what really keeps the momentum up and running. I mean, imagine you have a blog, and most people do have it. When I speak to people, people say, yeah, we know Inbound, we have a blog. And when I go and look up the last post that they made there, that was probably 4 to 5 months back. Now, what use is all your email campaigns or your analytics if there isn't enough traction, right, or enough meat on, which is really the content happening on the website. So that's really what the whole idea is. And let's get into it. How to turbocharge. Very simply put, let me lead with basic overview of why inbound. I am assuming that most of you have a lot of insight, so this might be a little redundant. So let me quickly breeze through some of the key areas or key aspects of your traditional or classical outbound marketing efforts that we all have been doing over so many centuries, and compare that with which way the whole world is moving towards. So I thought the images were fairly representative of that. Outbound is typically where you go fetching or looking for leads, which is nothing wrong with that. We all do that. Inbound is where you cast the right net. You sit at the right place. You cast the right net. Put the right food at the tip of your fishing rod and wait. And if you're at the right place at the right time and with the right food, you will be able to attract the right fish, which is really your appropriate target audiences, right? So the numbers are pretty interesting. These numbers I gathered, from some of these stats available till up to 2013. We are already in 2015, so these numbers have moved a little more. But I think this gives you a flavor of the value of inbound, right? So I'll just give you a second or two to read through and absorb. Traditional is really something that happens, but the numbers are there for you to look at how the outbound traditional marketing really is operating today. On the inbound side, I think there are very compelling numbers. More than twice as many leads as outbound is what you might get if done right. Of course, that's at the heart of it. The cost of running an inbound campaign or the cost of investing in inbound tactics for an entire year tends to be significantly lower, so 62% less than the cost of generating a lead by traditional methods. There are tremendous number of companies doing this, and year on year, the numbers are just gravitating more towards inbound. That's what this slide is. I will move on in the interest of time. So I try to gather a few case studies to really call out how people have been using inbound, where, when, and whom has it really benefited, right? I think this is a general statement I'm making, and I might be, and so don't. So I mean, it's really a general statement. The sense I've gotten working with various organizations is on the inbound space, we still are lower on the maturity curve. And so after a lot of digging in, Exotel is an example that I got of an Indian company that has really done very well with inbound. I'm pretty sure a lot of other businesses are doing that. E-commerce businesses thrive on inbound, right? And for them, inbound is their bread and butter, and it's all content that drives their business. Let's look at some of the other examples. I don't know how many of you might have heard of the Dollar Shave Club, a small company pretty much in the same line of business as Gillette. They make shaving blades, as you can see in the logo. These guys spent a little bit of money on a YouTube video, put it out there. They got 12,000 new customers in 2 days thanks to the amount of fan following that their YouTube channel generated. And this is just one channel. The statistics say that out of 30 odd popularly used tactics and asset types for digital asset, when I say asset types, I'm talking of digital assets for inbound. About 14 odd are the average number of assets or tactics that most effective marketers use. Then there's the 80-20 rule, where you figure out that for your line of business, maybe there are 4 or 5 tactics that really, really work. So I don't know how much of effort the Dollar Shave Club spent on figuring this out, but it appears that sorry for that. I forgot to just mute my phone, so that's probably a trigger to all of you as well. Well, going ahead with the presentation, that's what really these guys did. And if you look at the Unilever example, so I tried to mix and match the case studies to give you a flavor of how an individual entrepreneur like Lauren Luke has been able to leverage inbound. Then there are these huge giants like Unilever and Sony, and the numbers are in front of you. These guys did it big time. Dollar Shave Club is a mid-sized organization in the US. And Exotel is again they were a startup until about 3 years back. I don't know if they really call themselves a startup now, but as you can see, their numbers are pretty awesome. Any questions? Else, I think we can move on. All right. So what really is part of this inbound world like? So I think different people have different connotations of it, and I will share my perspective. So and I use the word hello world because most of the techie world, when you start doing a first C, C++, COBOL or a Java program, or even if it's HTML, hello world is typically your introduction into the world of programming or scripting. Though I am not a programmer or a hardcore techie myself, I thought that would be relevant. So hello inbound world. So the inbound world has 3 primary areas. One is the creation of content. So when I talk of content creation, I really see that there are 2 categories of content. One is your static content, where you build the content once For example, a website. You don't build a website every day. You build a website once, but then you keep updating information. So those are your posts, your articles, your pictures, your case studies, your interviews, customer interviews, your product pages, your service pages. All of that is again content, right? So there are a whole list of words that you typically hear or you look at, which are associated with the creation part of the content. So you have your microsites, your Q&A forums, your research reports, infographics, the whole nine yards. Then there is the distribution. Now you have the content before you, and you really want everybody in the world to take a look at what content you have. So that's where you look at your distribution. So your tweets, your posts, your webinars, like the one we're having right now, the hashtags, the comments, the boards, the pins, the news feeds. All of these words are typically associated with getting the word out there, right? Which is really all about distributing your content and telling people that, hey, you know what? I have something interesting that you might find interesting. I find it interesting. You might too. That's what it's all about. Then we move on to the third part, really, which is the analytics, right? So this is typically the three parts or the three pillars that make your world go round, and this is a constant cycle. So you create a blog post, you tweet about it, you make infographics, you promote it, you go to boards, you go to Q&A forums, and then you go back and you use Google Analytics, you look at statistics like visitors, fans, downloads, and all of that to really see if your message reached the right audience, if they really liked what you had to say, and if they would really want to engage more with you. So this is all of this really constitutes your content strategy, and not that you guys don't know that probably, but this is just my flavor into my way of presenting this as a holistic inbound world or inbound universe. So let's dive into the strategy, and this is where things could get a little interesting. Okay, I have something more to share with you. Just take a look at this. This is a very detailed survey that the Content Marketing Institute built, and I have taken an extract that is very relevant to our conversation today, which is content strategy. Of the 5,000 odd marketeers that responded to the survey, you had 93% of them saying that yes, they use content, which basically means that they are going the inbound way. Of those who rated themselves as highly effective, when I say effective, I'm talking of respondents who rated their organization's use of content marketing at 4 or 5 in terms of effectiveness, 66% of them believe that having a documented strategy is critical. Right? The rest of them had a strategy, it probably wasn't documented. That's what it is really telling you. And look at the rest of the numbers on the table. Right? They do have 86% of them have somebody to overlook the content strategy. I mean, it's as simple as that, right? It's a constant engine. You have to keep pumping in energy to make it happen. And unless you have somebody to own up that activity, you really can't see the results. That's what it is all. That's what it is talking about. I spoke a few minutes back about the number of tactics that people have used in 2014, and those are the numbers for you to ingest. And I think the closing statement really is that 60% of those who had a documented strategy, right, rated themselves very, very highly. So the rest of them may have had a strategy. It might be in the founder's mind, or it might have been something that's not really documented, not really out there. And so these are some numbers I thought I should share with you. Moving on, let's look at what you or I need to do to get a content strategy in place. In fact, when I work with businesses and companies, this is precisely what I do. I look at it from a business delivery operations perspective, because I feel running an efficient inbound channel is no different from running an effective business, right? I mean, if that is going to earn your leads, if that's going to earn your bread and butter as a business, we might as well start from the beginning, which is your mission, vision, your goals, and your objectives. So my recommendation typically is that look at your business goals, and look at your business goals from a very diverse perspective. Look at all possible goals. So here is where I will request you to start taking notes if you can. Maybe you have a notepad or a Word document, and just put down some of the goals that come to your mind. If you don't have goals, put a placeholder there saying that I need to figure out the goals. What I have put in here are some thought-provoking areas where you need to think of goals, right? So it could be a headcount. I mean, if you're a services organization and you're looking at growing your services, um, you're responsible for growing the business of a BPO, maybe, whatever it is. Headcount becomes a target. Or let's look at it the other way around. If you're a product company and if you are looking at generating a certain revenue number by the end of maybe March 2016, right? You might also need to have the right kind of manpower to be able to deliver a product that is able to generate the revenue. So their headcount again becomes a subsidiary goal if revenue is your primary or front end goal. Then the markets. So think about it from a market geography perspective. It could be that you're entering a new geography or a new domain. So maybe you have been working with small and medium-sized businesses. Maybe your strategy now is to work with large MNCs or diversify from a core manufacturing industry into retail, something like that. NPS is really your net promoter score, your brand awareness, your customer, your CSR, your social responsibility, corporate social responsibility. Those are all the things that a typical business, excuse me, looks at when you're into operations. So look at a goal from every perspective, and this is just a starting point. So consider this as your brainstorming session. So get in people who are your various stakeholders, people who are part of operations, and just brainstorm and look at what your goals really are. For most large organizations, this is already set. These goals don't really change. I've worked with large organizations like Convergys and Fidelity Investments. There, the goals are pretty much cast in stone, and this step might be a little redundant for those of you who are, part of very large organizations. But again, here, for the sake of this exercise, you might want to consider the respective team that you manage. So if your organization is a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate like a Sony, right? Maybe you're part of a small R&D team or an HR team. From that perspective, just look at your function, your group, your domain, and figure out what you think are the business goals. And maybe you won't just document them right now. The next step I typically recommend is look at your top three goals. Right? Look at your top three goals, and I'll tell you why I say that. The logic really is look at those goals. When I say top three goals, look at the goals that will give you the maximum gains with minimum effort. The reason I say that again is that inbound is an area where a lot of people are still getting their feet wet. And you do not want to take on audacious goals if you want to run a content strategy within your team, your department, your organizational, your organization. If you believe that the goals are pretty complicated, it takes 3 years to achieve them, don't go that far. Look at something that's doable, something that is quick, something that you can get maximum gains out of with minimum effort as a starting point. If you already are a veteran inbound marketeer, you might want to, this might really not be so relevant to you. And again, look at goals which are very diverse, because the interesting the interesting secret of inbound is if you're trying to put up an article on how to solve a customer problem, right? And the previous case studies that I showed you, what did Sony do, right? Sony Europe, they actually had a fault with their TV set. A lot of people were calling their customer care center in Europe to basically lodge a complaint and ask for help on how do they fix this error with their TV model. One of their users on their user forum actually wrote a step-by-step document on how to solve the problem. That really did not have anything to do with revenue generation, right? That was not really the end goal. But that little article or that post helped the group reduce a lot of the calls that were coming to their call center. So it was really an OPEX, an operations expense management that they were able to achieve through inbound. So it could be a very different goal that you're looking at. So keep your mind open and look at diversity in goals. Pick the top three goals. Again, something that you probably are already aware of. Keep them smart. Keep them specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. And from a goals perspective, my recommendation typically is look at the volume, turnaround, productivity, and quality that you are trying to achieve with whatever content you want to drive. When I say volume, you might say, the example I could give is maybe you have a blog. There are just about 2 posts coming up in a month. So your goal might be, I need 4 blog posts in a month. The turnaround could be, I need 4 blog posts at the rate of 1 blog post every week. Not that at the end of the fourth week you suddenly put four blog posts one after the other, in a gap of 5 hours. That's not the idea, right? So the turnaround could be a target. That probably is an area you're struggling with. You might need to be, maybe you're currently trying to work on a lot of content, figuring it out. 2 weeks have passed, 3 weeks have passed, you still don't have something, and then when the month is drawing to a close, you're rushing up and really getting some four posts out there. You don't want to get there, right? You don't want to struggle like that. So keep an SLA, keep a goal, keep a target of turnaround. So you want to say, I'm going to get at least one blog post within 4 days or 5 days. Productivity. So try to track the amount of time you spend in generating a post, right? So you might want to break it into smaller segments like ideation, brainstorming, what is it that you want to talk about, creating a draft, actually writing the post, looking for an infographic or a visual to add to the post, adding keywords to that post, sharing it with the relevant stakeholder. Maybe you are writing a post for the tech team, and till the technology director approves it, it really can't be the voice of the company on your blog platform, right? So you need an approval cycle there, and maybe this guy's traveling, or maybe the director of technology is very busy with a client commitment. You got to plan for that, right? That comes to content calendar, which I will talk about at the a few slides down. We are still on slide 6 or 14, so we have some time. And then you look at these areas that you want to achieve. Pitfalls to avoid, as I said, avoid focusing only on sales and marketing functions. Yes, inbound is primarily for lead generation, but as I said, it could be also for other areas that you should consider. Classic challenge, not involving all relevant stakeholders. It happens all the time. And I'm speaking that from experience of having handled teams, large teams, 200-member organizations, which is not really to do with inbound, but which is to do with the way businesses operate, right? The way we human beings operate. Being indecisive, or frequently changing goal statements. So those are your common pitfalls. Keep it simple, and get the ball rolling is what I would recommend. Are any questions coming in? Couple, is the pace all right? Because
Everything is
I
fine.
don't seem to have gotten any questions on the chat.
So there are few
Great.
questions.
All right. So let's.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
as you wish. If you want, I can just take those questions right now, or in case you're fine, we can continue with it and take up all the questions in the end, whichever way you want.
Great. Okay, so I think if the pace is all right, I will keep moving on. And Kapil, please, chip in if you think there's any question that needs to be addressed right away.
Sure.
Otherwise, I think I'm on a good momentum here.
So I'll just take up one question. This is from Nishchala.
Okay.
She wants to know what
Yeah.
constitute content marketing budget. Where exactly do the money go?
Great question. The money can go where you want it to go. As I said, within the areas of content creation, distribution, and analytics, there are a whole lot of areas that you possibly can spend. Everything is a spend, actually. But my recommendation would be go simple, go easy, go with a strategy where you can see some results, and that will in turn tell you how much you might need to allocate for what, without knowing that there isn't really a blanket statement or a generalization that I could recommend in this space. It's something that you got to learn and move along with. What I would definitely advise, though, is if you are starting off with an inbound exercise or a content marketing exercise for your organization, do consider the possibility of working. In fact, I will talk about it in the subsequent slides. Do consider the possibility of working with consultants or experts who are good at what they do. I've seen a lot of businesses where people have hired, let us say, a blogger, or have hired 2 or 3 people to run the show, and it is impossible to expect one person to be a master of all trades, right? So somebody who is good at blogging might not be the best analytics person, or might not be the best coordinator to make sure that everything is running well. So that could lead to a bit of frustration. So uh, try to do it yourself as far as you can. Where you need help, look out for people who can give you those specific skills, like somebody who might be a great WordPress developer or somebody who is a great web designer, and engage with those experts on a project or on a consulting basis till you are confident of what you're getting. So that's how you should plan and manage your expenses. I hope I addressed the question. Um, all right.
Great.
Let me move
Raghu,
on.
one more thing. Some of the
Yeah.
users are saying your voice is absolutely clear, but your volume is low. Is there something you can do about it?
Let me see. Let me see what I can do about it. Okay. Uh, I think this is as good as it gets. Let me try to, speak a little louder if that is going to help, and then let's see how it goes. Okay. Who do you want to reach? That's really the next question you want to address, right? So again, a lot of this is common sense, but I'm just quickly skimming or rather touching upon the areas that you need to really focus on while building a good strategy. Uh, Going back to the target, right? So if you're looking at headcount, you're looking at employees as a target audience. If you're looking at, if your goal is to be a thought leader, you're looking at industry influencers or domain thought leaders whom you want to attract and whom you want, to take you seriously. You want people who are in the industry, veterans in the industry, people of relevance in the industry to take you seriously because they out there have a huge following. And if they recommend you, or if they upvote you, or if they follow you, indirectly you get endorsed for what you are delivering to the market. That's really the whole idea. So your target audiences are pretty diverse if you look at it. The customers are one of the several target audiences that you can have inbound owners. So if you are running a larger organization and you have goals for different departments, maybe the HR team is entrusted with the responsibility of contributing to inbound to make sure that they get high quality candidates. So their goal might be to close positions within a time range that is shorter than they already are facing. That could be their goal. So in this case, the business owner, right, which is the person who's responsible for running the HR department, should also become the inbound owner. It's as simple as that. It's not a very technical role. It's somebody who really is asking questions and getting the job done. Invariably, what happens is there's an inbound owner, there's an inbound project manager who does not know who the HR head is and who's trying to gather blog posts on why the organization is great. You see the disconnect? He or she might be working in isolation, people work in silos, and the HR person after 6 months might come and say, well, those blog posts were all about why our company is great. That's not really our challenge. Our challenge is in getting people who want to, get back to the workforce after maybe a long maternity break. And we offer great work from home options to ladies who want to get back to the workforce. And then the inbound marketer goes, oops, that's something I did not consider. I'm sorry. So to avoid that, if the HR owner was the inbound owner, then he or she would typically tell the inbound person that, hey, look, this is really our challenge. We are taking a lot of time to close positions of this nature. So maybe you want to put a few posts that talk about why working in our organization is great for people of this category, people with this skill, so that we attract the right audiences, right? So I think it's common sense, it's intuitive, but when we get into the actual execution, these little details get missed out on. So that has to be an important part of your strategy. Buyer personas again. Buyer personas, are there. Nothing new again for most of you who are into marketing or business development. Buyer personas, you really talk about who your buyer is, their age profile, their demographics, their preferences, their dislikes, etc. What I wanted to focus on really is the buying decision patterns. That's something that is very unique to your business, to your industry, and you might not able to get that like this, right? So you might need to dig in deeper. You might need to talk to people who are actually on the sales side, who are actually closing the deals, and figure out what is their pattern. Do they ask questions? I mean, of course, everybody asks questions, but do they ask questions directly, or are they embarrassed about asking a few questions? So they don't ask questions, and then when it comes to closing the deal, they say, I'm sorry, they make some excuse and they go off. Is that what's happening? Because if that is happening, then inbound is a fantastic way to put up a lot of content out there that really addresses the questions of people, the questions that people might have that they don't really ask. They're embarrassed to ask, or they don't want to ask, or they take for granted, or they are biases, right? So these are the things that can come out. So buying patterns, what they are like, buying decision patterns. Who are the decision makers, influencers? So you might be typically targeting CTOs, right? Chief Technology Officers, because maybe you are selling a product, maybe it's a security product, maybe it's a firewall product. Who is influencing them? So is the CTO typically talking to his, engineers and getting some reports from them? In that case, you need to put content that these engineers are going to buy, because they're going to say, hey, you know what? I've been looking up these articles or these answers that have been given on Quora by this company. They really seem to understand how we need to tackle this security issue. So, Mr. CTO, please listen to them, or please go and reach out to them. They probably have a solution for our security challenges. So that's really important, right? So buyer personas, these are two important points that you should consider. Yeah, the we have done it already syndrome. Because most businesses will say target audiences, yeah, we've been in business, we've been selling it to these people for so long. Why should I go through this exercise all over again? Don't fall into that trap. Skimming the surface, not going down deep. When I talked of buyer personas typically will say, "Ha, kar chuke hain, we've done it, and we've been there, done that. We know it's about 25 to 30. These are all people who are blah blah blah." And I'm saying, okay, do we know how they buy? Do we know what questions they ask? Do we know when they ask the questions? Do we know how long it takes for them to move from question one to question five? And when you ask these probing questions, you get a lot of insights, right, in terms of what is it that's really not happening and that needs to happen. So don't skim the surface, please go deep. What are the touch points? So as I said, on the sales cycle, leading on from my previous point, look at all the areas that the sales teams touches your customer with. So there are prospect FAQs, there are in-house SMEs. In a lot of cases, while you are trying to close a sales cycle, maybe you have to build a proposal. And the operations team back there, who is supporting the pre-sales team, who are supporting the front-end sales team, those guys there might have a big challenge. And maybe that has not. And if you really go and ask them the question saying, hey, a delivery manager, what is the challenge when you have to go and build a proposal? And that guy might come up with very, revealing details, right? So that person might say, look, the pre-sales guy always wants a presentation or a deck as of yesterday. So I try to look at this information, quickly do that. I quickly build that information, right? So in that process, I'm not saying it is good or it is bad. All I'm saying is it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity that you could ease with some thought. So look at all those touch points. Look at third parties. If you're selling a product or a service that involves other stakeholders to be a part of the solution that you're going to offer, talk to them. Right? Figure out how is it that their lives can become easier by in the process of your sales cycle. So all of that will give you a lot of intel, a lot of inputs into what content you really need to get out there. Delivery cycle. While you are trying to get leads, there might be a lot of questions that the customer is not asking, or a lot of bias that the customer might have, which has to do with how you will service them once you hit delivery, right? For example, when I have to look at a product or a service, some of the questions that I ask is really, what is the customer service going to look like? After 6 months of having bought a product, if I call up the 1-800 number, am I going to get somebody who's going to respond? Or is it that I'm going to get somebody who's going to listen but not going to really help? So I have personally taken a lot of buying decisions, and I'm sure so have you, by looking at how these guys, how does the business service you post sales. So all that is part of your delivery cycle. So talk to your look at your internal compliance processes, your account farming process, your org culture. That's also very important. Maybe you like working in a certain way. Maybe you have certain best practices. Maybe you have a shared CMS at the back end which you use for approvals. It is important that you talk about it, because sometimes you take these things for granted, and the customer might not know that you're doing a lot of things. For example, some of the customers that I have worked with in the past wouldn't know how we go about, with our own internal QC processes. So when we highlighted to them, saying that we have a 3-step QC process, we do this, we do that, we do this, and that is how we are able to give you a product that's of quality, they were pretty much, impressed, saying that, okay, good to know that you guys use these processes. So when I look at processes and compliances, I'm talking of those things. A lot of companies are, CMMI certified, ISO certified, so those things take care of certain standard benchmarks out there. But it's always good to, consider these points when you're trying to build an army of content assets that's really going to push your entire inbound strategy. Pitfalls. Rushing through this, since it is hard to see a direct ROI correlation. This activity takes time, right? So this activity is you talking to somebody and saying, excuse me, sir, can you give me 20 minutes? I have some questions to ask you. Now that person might be doing so many other things, might not have the time, and this process might drag, can get a little slow, can get a little frustrating because you're trying to get a lot of intel, but people may not be really taking the time out to support you in the process. Which is why, if you look at the previous point, the business owner has to be the inbound owner. So if you were to talk to, let us say, the field sales executive, and the field sales executive might just say, hey, you know what, I'm busy for the next 5 days. I have to go on customer calls. Please don't call. What are you going to do? But if the sales head says, you know what, I've spoken to my sales guy and he's waiting for your call, right? Because I understand that we need to close this in the next couple of days. The whole equation changes. So don't rush. That's really my recommendation on this process. Which message for whom, right? So you have so many asset types, as I covered on the first 3 or 4 slides. You have one-time assets, you have recurring assets. Talk to again your prospects, look at your FAQs and all of those things to build your asset type. So, which is the message that can become a blog post versus which piece of information is best explained with infographics? Or is there anything that you want to do a lot of research on and present a white paper or build an ebook on? So for example, if you are, let us say, great at what you do, I'm assuming that we all are, right? Why should we doubt that? And you want to, build yourself as a thought leader in what you want to do. A lot of people use books as an avenue, right? Now, publishing books the traditional way can be fairly expensive, can be fairly rigorous and time-consuming. Releasing an ebook is a lot cheaper, is a lot faster, which goes back to what I spoke about, which is that the cost of running an inbound is significantly lower than your traditional outbound. So that's again what comes up there. So look at the asset types, put down whatever are the possible areas or possible types that will support your different categories of messages. And map your assets to personas. And that is another very important thing that a lot of people tend to ignore. Just because somebody has a lot of infographics doesn't necessarily mean that you have to generate infographics, right? If your buyer is somebody who's going to look at numbers, visuals in terms of pretty pictures might not really work. You might need to share some statistics out there. People again are using smartphones. A lot of people travel, they use their smartphones, they look at a lot of information online. So maybe the blog posts have to be optimized to make sure that they are consumed well when somebody is reading that content. So look at the personas, look at their buying habits, look at their buying patterns, and then design your assets in line with that. Again, tone and depth of volume is what matters. When I say tone, it is about whether it has to be informal, whether it has to be formal. Do you want to be friendly? Do you want to be very business-like? That's something you need to decide based on the buyer persona and the volume of content, right? So if you know that your audience's attention span is limited, you have a minute or two, and then the person is going to move on to the next article or blog or page. You really cannot have a 700-word post out there, which can get very heavy, very boring. So plan it intelligently. Look at your buyer personas. Pitfall: selecting too many or too few. So this is where people get, it's like you going to a buffet and you seeing a vast spread of from 25 items, 6 desserts, 11 main, 11 items for a main course, and you want this, you want that, you want this, you want that, you want this, you want that. At the end of the day, when you're done with your food, you typically have a lot of stuff on your plate, which is really going to go to waste, right? This is an area, this is a pitfall that typically happens in this phase. So please be careful. How will the message reach them? Now, this is where you plan your volumes. How much of what? As I said, an ebook every day doesn't make sense. An ebook maybe once in 3 months or 6 months might be the right way to go. It's for you to decide. Again, there is no standard benchmark that I can talk of. Again, if you go look online, look for statistics. Statistics is really, or the research that you will see online is really what has happened in the past. It is not necessary that the same thing has to happen for you, for your business in the future, right? Because this is a highly agile, a highly evolving industry. So use your best judgment and again use analytics and your feedback mechanism to see if it is working or not. So decide what your volume assets should look like. Identify your talent. I think this is what I just answered a few minutes back. Uh, Take a validated decision between insourcing and outsourcing, right? So there are three primary things that you want to consider while you take a decision of whether you should insource or if you should outsource. One is the talent, whether somebody in your organization really has the skill to do it or not. Unfortunately, I've seen a lot of businesses, a lot of companies tell me, Raghu, we have already hired a blogger, and he is about 20% utilized. Please do something. And I'm like, okay, so now I have to work backwards and see what that person can deliver, which really defeats the purpose, right? I mean, I have a goal to achieve, I have an end to achieve. So be careful about that. That's number one. Number two is, let us assume that you have a great guy, right? This guy is the technology geek. He's a tech guru. But this guy, because he's a tech guru, has absolutely no time to talk to anyone. So if you're expecting this person to go and start blogging and answering questions on TechCrunch or on TechStack or Quora, not going to happen. So maybe this person can be used as an approver once you have your draft content ready. So maybe you need to hire somebody who's going to do all the R&D, get all the information there, curate it, put it together in a structure, and then reach out to the tech expert who will quickly spend 15, 20 minutes and say, yeah, okay, I think this is great. And you know what, by the way, please add this experience I had last week with a very painful customer. That can make for a very, very good post. So look at that. And again, have execution owners. As I said, business owners are business owners. They need not be the execution owners also, right? So there are two things to it. So if you expect the business owner to necessarily execute also, then just understand that this person also is a human being, has 40, 45, 50 hours in the week, and then the person has to run the business, manage his or her own responsibilities, and take on this new responsibility called content for inbound, and also execute it. It can become a little daunting. So think of all those things while you identify talent, and that in turn will decide what should your budget look like. Now, very, very important, please go and adjust your goals, because I know when you're talking of goals, you probably did not consider all of this. You really went on to say that we need to achieve this, we need to close my hiring cycle time is 5 days, I want to get it down to 2 days, or my sales cycle takes 4 weeks, I want to cut it down to 2 weeks. All of that is fine, but at this point in time, you know what you're going to do, you know what assets you need, you know who is going to drive the asset for you. Now you think about whether the goal that you set for yourself was realistic or not. Maybe your goal was 10 blog posts in a week. Now, when you go back, you say, yeah, 10 blog posts is ambitious. Maybe I can get there after the first 9 months or 3 quarters or 4 quarters. But today, for the first 2 quarters, let me look at 5 posts. I'm running at the rate of 1 post a month, not good enough. 9 posts, too ambitious. 5 posts probably is the right target for the next quarter or two. So go with that, right? Do a reality check on your budget, on your cost, on your time, and on your capability. I'm assuming all of you are taking some notes as we move on. As I said again, these are thought-provoking ideas. Some of these are thoughts that you probably already have, but it's good to keep jotting down your points. And I'm going a little fast because we're drawing to the close of the content strategy development roadmap, and I want to give a generous amount of time for Q&A. Pitfalls to avoid, as I said, bias towards what one can do versus what one should do. Common trap, which is true to running a business, which is beyond content or beyond inbound, so to speak. Focusing on quantity rather than quality. This is another pitfall. In a negotiation with your talent, you might say, "Nene, get 10 blog posts, please. We have to do this. We need to get a lead." So while there's a sense of urgency, which is appreciated, which is needed, do set a realistic goal based on making sure that the quality is right, because one bad post or one bad tweet or something that is going to go wrong on the digital media is pretty much something that's going to backfire, because you leave a digital footprint and it is extremely difficult to erase your footsteps, right, in the sands of digital time, so to speak. So be careful about that. Focus on quantity, especially if you're new to this, especially if you're trying to grow or get into something new. Maybe you have been posting all along, right? Maybe it's time for you to release an ebook. Just because you released 20 posts in 6 months doesn't mean that you can release a 20-page ebook, in 3 months or something like that. There's no one-to-one correlation there. Each asset type has its own dynamic, so respect that and focus on the quality first rather than on the quantity. Most often than not, I see a lot of simple things like grammar errors and silly things like that, where even if you want to say something significant, these are distractors that take away from the impact of the actual message. Okay, important part: when will the message reach them? So now I'm looking at the distribution arm of the three verticals that I showed. By the way, I don't know how many of you noticed that those three rays coming down from the globe is the three rays of the logo that I have as well. Anyway, that is a side point. When will the message reach them? So you have, like running any other operation, look at building your project plans. You want to have a website done, or you want to have your website, your existing website, moved on to a Web 2.0 website, which is really a responsive website. Maybe you have a website that is that doesn't have adequate case studies, or that doesn't have a blog section at all. You want to build those assets onto your existing website. That's a one-time asset. So look at building a project plans to do that. Your content calendars, your service level agreements internally, right, with your various vendors. Maybe you have somebody who's giving you infographics. Maybe there's somebody who is doing, draft blog posts for you. So have an SLA with them. Look at how is it that you're going to make sure that there is a measurability of the output that they're going to give you. You have to build your SIPOC chart, which is really your supplier input, process, output, customer charts. So for every asset type, you will have a SIPOC. You will have process maps. So once you get the assets, what are you going to do next? You're going to review them. You're going to do a proofreading. You're going to get an approval. You're going to get a re-proofreading, send it for a reapproval, and then publish. Right. So there's a process to that. Again, some of these processes are all borrowed from standard operations processes like quality systems, but they lend themselves beautifully to the process of having a very robust execution plan to back your content strategy. Your FMEA charts really are your failure modes and effects analysis. So look at what could go wrong, identify them as risks, and see what you can do about them. And again, your business contingency, right? So let's assume that you were supposed to make a guest blog. You are the CEO of your company or the founder, and you're supposed to make a guest blog on your particular platform. Now, you already have a lot of people who are waiting for your blog post, and on a Friday evening, for some reason, the blog platform on which you're invited as a guest to blog may not be responsive. They might have some other issue, and your post can't go. What are you going to do? Are you going to wait? Are you going to go somewhere else and post the same post? Are you going to wait for the next week? If so, for how many days are you going to wait? Are you going to wait till the next Wednesday and then decide that you're going to put it on your own corporate blog site rather than going on a guest blog site? Those are things that you need to have figured out already, right? This is the strategy, by the way, because when the rubber hits the road, a lot of these assumptions are going to fall apart. So at least think through these. You're in the strategy mode. You're figuring out these things. You're still on paper. You're still not hit the road running. You're still maybe 5,000 feet above ground level. So get all these things sorted out. Distribution process, as I said, the content calendar. Again, here you might need to have service level agreements. What does it mean? You have a blog post, right? The blog post has to reach a certain audience. So the distribution is where you want to have your process, your charts, your FMEA, and your contingency plans. So figure out that, look at how you're going to make sure that your content reaches the target audience, your message reaches out to the target audience within a finite time, because it is only then that you will go on to the next step, which is analyzing it, right? So you might have a great blog post. In fact, a lot of people I meet seem to have gotten that part fairly in place, right? So people are publishing posts. There are a lot of companies, there are a few companies who are pretty regular at it, but they don't have page views, right? Just writing a great blog post doesn't necessarily get you page views. You got to go and make a noise about it. You got to go and talk about it. That's what it is, the distribution process. The pitfall, making this a very, very, very intellectual exercise, spending a lot of time on paper trying to think of a lot of things that can possibly go wrong because you're really involved and you're charged about this whole thing. So take it easy. Put something fairly simple. The idea is to get it to work, right? Because when you get it working, you're anyway going to change maybe 20, maybe 30% of it. If you're really good at what you have done in a strategy, you might need to change maybe just 5 or 10% of it when you are in execution mode. But otherwise, be prepared. Things are going to change. And this is not cast in stone, thankfully. So you can iterate, and that's the nature of the business. So don't allocate too much time or don't get, don't make it a mental exercise. Uh, Put what you can and then start executing. Over delegation is again a big pitfall, right? Because again, going back to it, there's no direct ROI. You're building out process charts. You're looking at processes like, oh God, this is laborious. A Friday evening, I need to get back and I need to do other things, other important things. Let somebody else handle this. Again, accountability goes off and then results don't happen. So avoid over delegation and spending too much time on this exercise. Finally, the analytics. So this is where it's fairly straightforward. This will tell you what is working, what is not working. So plan to map your results to your goals, right? So look at what your goals really were. Analytics can get fairly daunting. In fact, I'm spending a lot of time learning up a lot of things about analytics myself. I'm a hardcore content guy, right? So there are so many new things happening in the field of analytics that it can get very, very intimidating and can get very, very deep, right? Who came in from where, which device did the person use, which version of the Android OS on which phone did that person to use to access which page how many times. There's a whole lot of data. A lot of it might be redundant. So keep the goals high level, keep it simple. As you spend more and more time on it, you will automatically, naturally evolve to a higher level where you will then ask more deeper or more probing questions. So keep it simple from that perspective. Look at what tools you can possibly use. Google Analytics is obviously by default the most popular and a great tool to have. There are several other tools as well. Since the focus of our conversation right now is content, I'm not going to go too deep into that. Look at what kind of reports make sense, right? So your goal statements in your project plans should have what kinds of reports do you want to publish and to whom. Think about it. Have test plans as well, right? So for example, if you're looking at you're experimenting for a month, you want to see if this particular post or this particular distribution channel is going to get you so many unique visitors, right? Test it out, put a plan there and see how that's going to work. And put your checkpoints. What are you going to check? You're going to do this, 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 and keep it straightforward there. You're going to check for which device is going to make the best sense. You're going to check for what was the bounce rate possibly on your site, so on and so forth. So decide the checkpoints again based on your original goals, your objective, and your personas. And that's when you run your analytics, because without those guidelines of what you want to analyze and what is it that you want to achieve, it's very easy to get lost in an ocean of data. The pitfall to avoid there is definitely expecting too much too soon, because a lot of people feel that, oh God, I spent such a lot of time doing a whole lot of things. I should get my first lead like in about a week's time or a month's time. It might seem a little silly now that I say that, but when you actually start putting your energy and time into it, I have seen customers saying that Raghu, all of this makes sense, but it takes so much time. Can you quickly start doing something, so that I can see this working, I can see the leads coming out, and that's a pitfall that you should avoid, because as I said, quality over quantity. If you do it right, it takes time. It takes time for a customer or an audience or your follower to really start trusting you, right? To really believe that what you're putting out there is of value, is helping him or is helping her. So to generate that kind of loyalty, it takes some time. But if you do it right, you reap the benefits for a lifetime. It's like cultivating a tree, right? A tree or a crop takes a lot of time to grow, but once it grows, it yields fruit for a long time. So that's really what a healthy inbound content strategy can do for your business, and that's really what I had. And at the end, as you see, now you hit the road running. This is when the rubber hits the road. You really start into execution. Um, okay, I've been rambling off one way for way too long, I suppose. Uh, questions? Anything else that you wanted to share? You want to ask? Please feel free.
Great. So thanks a lot, Raghu, for sharing the complete strategic perspective on how to go about and various tips and guidelines on this. Guys, you can ask your question now. I'm assuming a lot of the questions which were asked earlier are now actually covered. So it would be great if you can just reiterate your questions uh, in the way the discussion has happened so far. So I'll just take up this Anil question: how to go
Yeah.
for the mobile content strategy?
Well, that's a very good question. I haven't really spent too much time, honestly, in the mobile space. The philosophy is again the same. A lot of people that I have interacted with are developing apps, and there are a lot of tools that help you build very quick apps. A lot of magazines are going the app way, so you will see a lot of these leading, magazines having an app that you can download, wherein the next issue of their magazine is really on the application. That's a great way for building a customer base on your using the mobile, and that's also fairly in line with the kind of devices that we have today. The traditional way of push marketing with SMSs, I really don't know how effective that is and how much that might be relevant to your business.
Great. There's a lot of questions coming up, which we actually have. We'll extend the session by 10 minutes if it's okay with everybody. So I'll just take up the next one.
Yeah.
Can you throw some light on multilingual content? That's a question asked by Mrunal.
So, what would you like to know, Mrinal? Multilingual content meaning, are you implying how do you get content for your own website in different languages? Was that the question?
Yes, that's what Manul is saying.
Great. So I think, yes, I mean, absolutely, that's again a part of content. There are a lot of very, very good translation companies and localization companies. I have worked with some of the best ones in the US. And, these organizations do a fab job. They have a very tight process. But again, what you need to do as an inbound marketeer is start off very simply with what is the asset type that is going to make the most sense if you were to go and look at a language option, right? So it goes back to looking at your buyer personas. You might have audiences in five different countries or continents, right? And my recommendation would be look at analytics, look at who are the audiences that are most engaging with you online. And if they are the same folks who are also your customers, then it makes sense to deliver a lot of content in the language that is native to them. But again, I think the question really is if you are predominantly, let us say, servicing the German market, right, or the European market, and if you believe that as against German, French is the language that you would typically use to sell, please bear in mind that if you've done a great job, selling to somebody who's there in speaking that language, remember that this is just one part of the story, right? Inbound or lead generation or selling is one part. You got the customer, and now you got to deliver as well. So if your delivery team is not capable of handling the customer with the same level of language proficiency, you could be in a bit of a soup. So choose your asset types that is very relevant to the end objective that you're trying to achieve. If it is just about educating a customer, or if it's an ebook that you want to develop because you want to penetrate a new market, right? Maybe you're going into the Middle East and you want to have a lot of content translated into Arabic. Use these kinds of services, and they have good rates for core translations, for proofreading, and things like that. And that's the way to go. That's what I would recommend.
Great. As while I'm asking taking up the next question, I'm simultaneously launching some polls. The first poll is that
Sure.
are you okay with sharing your contact details with Raghu? Raghu has some interested content in the space of inbound marketing, so he wants to share with you. So in case you're okay, just mention yes over here, and I'll share your contact details with Raghu. So while you're responding to that, there's a next question from Imrose. Imrose wants to know what is the best what are the best channels, platforms you can use to distribute your content? How do you connect and
Right.
build traction with industry experts and thought leaders?
Yeah, I think the simple answer is look at the fishing rod example, right? So you go and fish where you get fish. So one way of looking at it is look at who are the thought leaders in your industry, right? Who are the people whom people flock to look at? So if let's say you're in the space of selling sports equipment, right? Look at who are the sportsmen who are very, very vocal, very, very active on social channels. Look at what they're talking of. Look at who their followers are, and that's a very, very simple, effective, practical way to piggyback on industry influence. So imagine if Sachin Tendulkar is talking about a particular brand of shoes that he's endorsing, and you may have something to do with that particular product. And if you were to leverage those kinds of industry thought leaders to push out your message, that's an easy, effective, and a very powerful way to leverage inbound.
Great. So next, actually, Nischala has asked a series of four questions. So I think the better would be I'll unmute her and we can have an open conversation. So while I'm doing it, let me just launch the second poll. You can take it more like a commercial break. It's not really an inbound way to ask this question, but in any way, I've just asked it. As Digital Vidya, we do 6 months course on digital marketing. So if you're interested, you can just mention yes over here, and I'll ask someone from our team to call you. So by the time you're responding, Nischala, I've unmuted you. Nischala, are you there?
Hi, Nishula.
Nischala, looks like your mic is not working, so I'll just read out the questions. Uh, so the first question is, in what scenario do you recommend spending marketing dollars for content distribution slash promotion?
Under what scenarios? Well, I think you need to, without getting a distribution channel in place, you really aren't going to serve the purpose. So you have to do something there. The question is not really which channels. I think you need to look at fundamentally, as I said, look at your buyer personas. Look at who's listening to you when, right? I mean, personally speaking, I am not very active on Facebook. I'm very active on Quora. I'm very active on LinkedIn. So if you were to reach out to me, I would really give you my time and attention if you had something to share with me on the forum that I use. So again, it goes back to understanding the buyer personas of your target audiences and yeah, Nishala, we can hear you now, unless that's somebody else. Okay,
Yeah,
so I hope I kind of addressed the question there.
great. So the next question from Nischala is, what are the top five metrics to measure content performance sh- or show content ROI?
As I said again, look at the goals you set out to achieve, right? Things like if you're starting off, keep it to basics. Basics like the number of page views, the number of visitors, where are they coming from, how many of them are really buying your product. Those are simple, easy metrics that you want to have. And if the more you mature in the process, the more you will yourself figure out what are the right questions to ask, what are the data points that you need to look at. But fundamentals never change, right? The fundamental is, in fact, some of the wins are outside of analytics or are outside of what the tools can offer you, right? For instance, um, some of the people that have worked with me or who have asked me this question is, Raghu, we know what we want. It is just that I don't have 6 hours to invest in putting a blog post out. And no analytics will basically, no tool will tell you, no Google Analytics will tell you if the 6 hours that this person was spending posting, making a blog post himself has come down to 30 minutes. So you will need to take that time and effort to recognize that. And for a significantly important person in the organization, if out of 40 working hours, if you're reducing 6 hours to maybe an hour, which is just the review and approval process of a blog post, you're saving the person 5 hours, right? That's a significant saving of a huge number from a business standpoint. So those could also be the analytics that you want to look at when you are looking at setting up targets in analytics.
Great. I'll just ask the next two questions from Nishchala simultaneously. These questions are: one is, what frequency do you recommend for tracking and reporting content performance? What are the tools that you can suggest apart from Google Analytics? And particularly related to B2B businesses, what could be the top three most popular content formats?
Again, as I said, I don't know which industry you are referring to. I don't know which market you're referring to. Depending on the industry, depending on the market, things change. So I would request you to, take the time out, do your own research. From a tool perspective, there are a variety of tools. I don't necessarily endorse one tool over the other. There are a lot of curation tools like Curata. There are a lot of tools out there, but uh, you know, as a content strategist, my recommendation really is figuring out how you want to get the right message out there. The tools are just aids, right? For running an entire inbound campaign, you have tools like HubSpot, but that's not really the point of what I'm trying to explain here. So if you really look at the right kind of content for the right kind of audiences, the tools will really help you get the message out there.
Great. There's the next question from Sanjeet Chandra. He wants to know, for startups, how early in the
Yeah,
product launch do you need to start preparing for content?
great question. I don't know how many of you have heard of a product called Hotjar. They started reaching out maybe 4 months before they were going to hit the road, right? So it really depends on how. Okay, my recommendation will be as early as maybe 4 to 6 months ahead of the curve. See, the point is this: start talking about something when you have something worthwhile to say. That's really the point. It's not about you can start 2 years before the product launch. You can say, I have an idea. I plan to build a prototype 2 years down the line. That's the message you want to give. Do you really want to give a message like that? On the contrary, if you have something that let's say you have a 6 month or a 3 month timeline for building the pilot, as you go along those 3 months building your pilot, the same 3 months you can have a beautiful content strategy that talks about the journey of the building of the pilot, right? You can say we're building this feature, and there are so many ways to engage with the audiences. You might say they're coming up with this little feature change. How many of you vote for, and how many of you will vote against? That's an easy way to look at gathering a lot of traction. Or you might say, you might take pictures of your team working together in a huddle and say, these guys have been sweating it out for the last 12 hours, give them a thumbs up, right? And you might want to tweet that message. You might want to take a picture. There's so many things that you can do along the line of, the progress along that duration. So there, again, there is no, as I said, there is no benchmark, there's no yardstick. You might want to look at you look at how similar businesses have used different tactics in the past. But again, it is not necessarily that the same thing will work for you, because it's your business, it is your journey, it is your time now. What happened then was back then, and you can just take those learnings and get creative. I mean, this is a fun space. That's how I look at it. The fun is that it's very, very agile. It's also scary because of that. So it depends on your risk appetite at the end of the day.
Great. I think with that, we've actually sort of completed all the questions that's been asked so far. So at this point, since we've already
Great.
exceeded with 10 minutes, really want to thank you, Raghu, for taking time out. And really want to thank everybody
Pleasure.
for participating in today's session. Just wanted to let everyone know that we'll soon be sending you the recording of today's session, as well as the presentation over the email. And in case we'll do a blog post, in case you have any question that is left unaddressed, you can just put a comment on that blog post, and I'll just forward that question to Raghu as well. So that's it from my side, Raghu. Anything you want to say before we close the session?
Well, Kapil, thank you so much for inviting me over. I had fun with this session. I couldn't hear too many people, but that's okay. I can hear their voices through you, and that was fun. And I really hope that what I had to share was something that each of you could take something from. And I look forward to engaging with you and your colleagues and your friends over the coming months, weeks to go. And all the best for the strategy. And be prepared to fall is all I will say. Like we all learned swimming by swallowing some water. We all learned cycling by falling off and getting injured. But now that we are masters, we take it for granted, right? So inbound in the larger scheme of things, riding the inbound cycle is something which a lot of us are figuring our way through. Some other markets where, typically in the West or in the US, where people have been there, done that, they're struggling with a bit of a different challenge, right? They're looking at how to cycle extremely fast on a race course and break records. So my recommendation is, please do not get intimidated with a lot of awesome things that you might see or hear online. At the end of the day, it's your journey, and till you dip your fingers in the water, till you hit the road running yourself, you might not really get the best of it. So take the plunge, take the risk, take the chance. More likely than not, you will succeed. And all the best.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for your participation. The session is closed. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Good day.